thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the Insider's Guides. I am thrilled to have a Gulfstream pilot with me today. Mike Sands currently flies the G4SP, the G5, and the G550 out of Boca Raton, and he flies those all over the world. Thrilled to have you with me today, Mike. Thank you so much for joining this episode.
Happy to be here.
Well, it's taken me a while to catch you in this part of the world so that I could actually interview you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do day to day flying? Because I know you're more than just a captain. You also are the director of safety for Journey Aviation.
Yes, with Journey Aviation, I'm a captain on the G4 and the G5 series aircraft. Includes the 450 and the 550 that we have. And I'm the director of safety. And recently I became check airman on the G4s. So it keeps me pretty busy.
I guess, very busy. Thank you for telling us that. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the differences in performance and maybe the operations of those different models of Gulfstream airplanes?
Sure. Basically, starting with the G4SP, G4SP is an offshoot of the original G3 aircraft, more range, better fuel economy. The G450 is the same wing and engines as a G4SP, and it has the upgrades of systems and avionics of the G550. The G5 was a growth out of the G4 program to give the aircraft more range. So it expands the range of the airplane from 4,200 nautical miles out to about 6,500 nautical miles. Cabin's a little bit longer, bigger wing, better performance. And the G550 gave the G5 an upgrade to the avionics. It gave it the plain view, fully digital cockpit.
Well, it sounds like it's a dream to fly. How is switching back and forth between the two for you?
Not that difficult. I've been flying Gulfstream since 2003. So someone who's come up the ladder won't see huge changes as they move into the newer aircraft. It'd be harder to go from the 550 going backwards to the old technology. But the 5 is everything you ever wanted in a 4 was in the 5, and the 550 just improves it with better technology, better displays, makes your life a whole lot easier.
Mike, what's the typical mission that you see the 550 fly? And is that the mission it was built for, or was it built for something more?
550 is super long haul. We see a lot of 550 trips are out of the West Coast, California, San Francisco area, going to Japan, China, Hong Kong. On the East Coast, we see we have a fair amount of charter business with it going out of the Caribbean, going to Istanbul, Europe, where those trips, a G4 can't do it nonstop. The G5 can do it nonstop with ease.
Tell me about the operations of the aircraft. What's the longest or the most challenging flight you've taken in the 550?
Thanks to charter limitations, the longest we really do is a 12-hour leg, and a 12-hour leg is really not a problem with the 550. I've done from the Van Nuys area, California, Los Angeles, to Italy. We've done from Dominican Republic to Istanbul, which is pushing 12 hours. The return trip can be, if the winds are strong, can be even more challenging. But in general, the performance of the aircraft is excellent, and making those kind of trips, it's more a matter of getting enough sleep before the trip than worrying about the aircraft performance.
And how's the fuel performance and the speed during those long flights?
We normally, on the G550, we normal cruise it at 8.3, which is about 485 knots. If the mission requires higher speed, we'd run it at Mach 8.5. For super long, if we have to go further, we can slow the airplane down. We slow it down to G4 speeds around 8.0, 8.1, and you can stretch the airplane and go almost 14 hours.
How do you feel like the pilot workload is sitting in the cockpit? Do you fly often with 3 pilots, with 3 crew aircraft?
The G5 and G550 are almost always going with 3-man crew. Anytime we have a flight that's over 10 hours, we have to go to 3 pilots. If it's over 12 hours, we have to go to 4 pilots. To me, the 11 to 12-hour flight with a 3-man crew is much easier than the 9-hour flight because you know you're going to have a rest period. We generally space it out that whoever's the most tired at the beginning of the trip takes the first 4 hours off, and then we plan accordingly. It does have its advantages having a crew rest area.
So how does that conversation go? How much sleep did you get last night? Do you have a kid at home that woke you up? Were there thunderstorms? How do you determine that?
Well, to me, one of the biggest safety factors is fatigue. That's an industry buzzword right now. And it should be part of every crew's pre-flight briefing is, how are we feeling today? We're here, we're going to do a trip. You know, how do you feel? What's your physical well-being? Are you sick? Are you tired? Are you exhausted? What do we need to do? And let's find a way for it, mitigate the risk. So, yeah, making sure that, you know, whoever's tired, let them get rest so you have a fresh, alert crew throughout the flight.
You mentioned having a crew rest on the aircraft. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that accommodation is, and then how it affects the galley and the rest of the crew areas of the aircraft?
The 550 has a crew rest area that's separated from all the rest of the activities. It's dark, it's quiet, and the crew has the ability to lay down and go to sleep and get their rest without being disturbed.
And then what do the flight attendants say about the galley area?
The newer airplanes, the galleys are always better. The equipment's better. They've got more storage. The designers of the aircraft continually are improving it to where it makes their prep time better and easier.
I've interviewed a couple of pilots who have said that the crew rest area often ends up being the overflow area storage for the galley. Do you see that happening on the G550 or no?
No, my experience on the 550 in general, the 550 does not carry large passenger loads. And typically we have 2 or 3 passengers on our trips, which gives lots of room in the cabin and tons of storage in the baggage. The baggage in the 550 is almost 50% bigger than it was in the G4s. So there's no reason to be storing supplies in the crew rest area. It's a crew rest area for us.
Fantastic. Tell me a little bit more about the passenger experience as you're moving up through this aircraft, what they say about the noise level and about the comfort and the amenities in that area.
Again, it keeps getting better. It's always been a comfortable airplane. The 4SP gave you a higher cabin height, so a little better stand-up ability in the cabin. The 5 and the 550 carry the same cabin, large windows, and they keep getting quieter. I think the noise insulation is better on the later models. And with the longer cabin, you're that much further away from the engines. With cabin doors closed, it's whisper quiet in the back of the airplane. Really nice.
What do they say about the sleeping accommodations on the aircraft?
Most of our aircraft, you can sleep 5 or 6 people. The seats all convert into beds. We carry inflatable mattresses and bedding for all the seats. It's comfortable in the back. I haven't had the privilege of riding in the back and sleeping though.
Well, that's good because someone needs to fly the airplane, I think.
Exactly.
What about the lavatory? Do you hear any comments about that?
The best improvement in the 5 Series airplanes is they changed the lav to a vacuum lav system. So no more holding tank in the cabin. no more blue juice to spill, and way, way less odor. So that's a much better feature, much less problems.
How do the passengers feel about the accessibility of luggage while they're in flight? I know that they can access that through the lavatory. How is that as a customer experience or passenger experience?
We usually ask the passengers if there's anything that they're going to want access to in flight. And if it's small bags, that will find place in the cabin to store it between seats. Otherwise, they can access almost anything in the baggage compartment as long as they haven't put too much baggage in there. There are limitations on how long they can be in the baggage compartment. So we like to have them just tell one of the crew members what they need and we'll retrieve the bag for them. It's just an easier way to keep them out of the baggage compartment.
Why can they only be in there for a specific amount of time? Just curious.
Above certain altitudes, on the G5 and 550, the baggage compartment is a pressurized bulkhead between the lav and the bathroom, and it's required to be closed above certain altitudes. And you can only have the door open for a few minutes at a time, and then it has to be locked and sealed.
A safety feature.
Yes.
Okay. How about loading the luggage in from a crew or ground handling standpoint? What's that experience like?
It's good to have a strong, tall line guy to hand the baggage up to you. The Gulfstream sits high. That's gives it great ramp presence, but it does make loading baggage a little more difficult than an aircraft that sits low to the ground. So at the bottom of the baggage door, in the a little over 6 feet in the air, heavy bags, it's quite a lift to get them up and in. But the 550 does have a larger baggage door than the 4, so it makes accommodating big bags a little bit easier. But we do have to take our time getting them in there.
And then as far as opening the luggage area from a crew perspective, do you do that from inside or outside of the aircraft?
It can be opened from either end. The normal procedure is to open it from the inside of the aircraft.
Great. Well, I'd love to, since you work for an operator that operates a number of these and you're the director of safety, I'd love to hear your perspective on the maintenance and reliability of the Gulfstream series of aircraft.
The Gulfstream is an excellent product. The number one thing for reliability is getting quality maintenance. Doesn't matter what kind of aircraft it is. If you don't have good maintenance and your aircraft isn't well taken care of, it's not a good aircraft. Our airplanes are taken care of. They have excellent dispatch reliability. The 550 and the 450, being newer, also improves reliability. But even newer aircraft with high time, the engineering gets better and better, and they, over time, with this basically being an evolvement from the early aircraft, they've had 40 years to keep making it better and better, and that's why the dispatch reliability is just so good. They've worked out all the bugs over the last 40 years.
I love that, and they keep coming up with new improvements for their new aircraft. Amazing. So, about how many weeks a year, I know some years it's more than others, but about how many weeks a year would you say that an aircraft is down for maintenance, a G550?
Depends on the inspections. Some years you have your shorter inspections where it's only down for several days to a week. And when you get to the larger inspections, it's going to be down for 5 or 6 weeks, depending on how extensive it is and whether you're going to add paint interior to that maintenance inspection. You could be down for several months.
Good to know.
So again, it's all planning. It's all planning what you need to do, when you're going to get it done, and when you want the airplane available for trips.
With bringing new aircraft onto the fleet, is there any particular thing that you look for when you're bringing new aircraft into your fleet that is a kind of a red flag for G550s or 450s that you think people need to look out for if they're buying one?
Right now, the biggest thing that everyone is looking for is whether the aircraft has ADS-B, which is a mandatory requirement for January 1, and whether or not it has fans 1A installed. If your aircraft isn't already scheduled for it, just getting it on a schedule is going to be difficult. If you're not already scheduled, you're probably not getting your airplane in by the end of the year, and that's going to create difficulties or poor routing for going across the Atlantic. It's also expensive, and so that's put a high demand for aircraft that already have the equipment installed, and fairly steep discounts for aircraft that don't have the equipment.
I think one of the things that I see, and I don't know if you've experienced this or not, but aircraft that have been maintained in different parts of the world with more developing general aviation markets, is that sometimes there have been shortcuts with the maintenance, or the aircraft have been left outside instead of being hangared, which can cause some corrosion issues. I don't know if you've experienced any of that, but it just reminds me how important pedigree is.
It's important. An aircraft that's hangared is generally a better aircraft. Gulfstream recommends that you hangar your aircraft. The more an aircraft flies, it's actually better for the aircraft. It just seems the airplanes that are flying regularly with less downtime just run better. The more they run, the better they run. But it is important that the work that's been done on the aircraft was done by a qualified shop that knows what they're doing and isn't taking shortcuts. In the end, it just decreases the value of the airplane.
Well, thanks, Mike. This has been an amazing overview of the G550. Thank you so much for